Alrighty, so welcome everyone. So we're going to go through a little bit of everything, and always let me know if you have any questions that I'm not covering. Let's just jump right into it. Everyone can see okay? Make it a little bit bigger. To begin with, we're going to do simple copy paste. So as you can see here, I have my super awesome cell with all my formatting. And I am just going to do a copy on that. And then I am going to do a paste. And you see that pastes everything as you'd expect. We might want to do some other things. So I'll leave that there. Next, we can do more intricate things with copy and paste. Because there's so many different ways you can paste, you can find those in when you right-click, or you can also find them in the paste drop-down here. And so the different things you can do are just regular paste, which copy-pastes everything. You can paste values, formulas, transpose. You can just paste the formatting, or you can paste a link to a cell. So right now I'm going to paste the formula, and you can see that paste the formula without the formatting. And so the formula is this up here in this bar. Now right now I just have a simple math problem, but that formula could be like the addition of two different cells in Excel. So since I pasted the formula, it's keeping that same formula there. But let's say I don't want to paste the formula, I want to actually just have the value of that. So I'm going to do a Control-C, and then right-click here, and do the second one, value. That's just going to paste in 57, which is the resulting value of that previous form. This is great when you're like transferring data from one sheet to another, or one worksheet to another, workbook. The last one we're going to look at here is pasting a link. So I'm going to do a Control-C again, and then over here, paste link, paste a link to that cell. You see it actually has the cell location here, A14, which is this cell. So now if I update this to be 256, it updates that resulting one. This is also a really handy tool if, say, I want to copy a cell from a different sheet, and then I can paste a link to that cell. It now puts in the sheet name and the cell. So I actually use that a lot if I'm running a formula on one page that references a different page. That way I can grab the link to that cell really quick and then enter that into my formula instead of having to type it out. Lastly, we'll look at transposing here. And so you see I have 1, 2, 3 on the top and ABC on the left. I'm going to do a copy, and then I'm going to paste that over here, but I'm going to do a transpose. What that does is it just rotates everything. So now ABC is on the top, and 1, 2, 3 is down on the left. That's really helpful if you're working with something that's just in the wrong orientation and you want to flip it around. Alrighty. So let's go into some formatting stuff. Right now, we have these two different things. Borders are pretty much going to be the same as they are in Word. There's not too much difference. But you have this border drop-down up here, and you can apply all different things. You could just apply a bottom border, and that applies a bottom border to the area that I have selected, not to each line. So I could say no borders. I could say outside borders, and then I'll put a box around my selection. I could say all borders. And you can even get more tricky with this. If I right-click my selection and say Format Cells, I can go into the border thing. And now I can play around with this. So I can say, okay, I don't want the horizontal lines, so I'm going to take those out, but I do want to keep my columns there. So I take that out, and now I have just the columns. Text rotation is a fun, handy little tool sometimes. You can rotate a potato there. I'll make this a little bit bigger as well. And there is the special potato. Not required for rotating. So you have these different options here. Let's look where this might be really handy. So I have this guy here that has all this, but we can't see that. So if we want to rotate that up, hey, there are my columns, names all right there. Text wrap is another great tool. If you have information in one cell, we can do a text wrap, and that wraps that information around so it fits into one cell. It does make the row height bigger, of course, but it allows it to fit in this one space. What we can also do is if we kind of want to manually control where those line breaks are, if you go into the cell, and I just got in here by double-clicking. Another way to do this is to click up in the formula bar. I don't think this trick works. It does, okay. The other way to do this is to use Alt and Enter, and that allows me to say, okay, I want a line break right after information, and I want one right here. And that just allows me to choose where those line breaks are. Sometimes you will get errors in Excel. Well, often you'll get errors in Excel. But one simple one is if you're just trying to put text or like pointers or something, or like the three main ones are equals, plus, and minus. If I put an arrow that goes like that, it's going to say, hey, that doesn't work, because it's detecting that first character as a minus. What I can do instead is just put an apostrophe right before that, and that says treat this cell as text. And that way it shows up without the apostrophe, and it just is written there. And that is noted on your thing, cells that start with operators prepend apostrophe. So you can see I did similar. I kind of used that here. Starting value is 250, and I wanted this specifically to be plus 25%. So if I just say plus 25%, that's going to say, oh, you want 25%. No, I want that to say plus 25%. And then here's my resulting thing, which you can start to see formulas. Ooh. So I have a number here. It is a kind of special number. But let's look at the different ways we can represent numbers in Excel. So right now this is just set as general. So we can look at this as a number, and we can see it goes into that format. You can also move the decimal place around now that you're here. I always move it the wrong way the first time. It'll kind of do visual rounding, and the key here is that it's visual rounding, not actual rounding. So if you were to reference this number, it would not actually be rounded. And we'll look at that more later. We can do currency, we can do accounting, which I believe if we have a negative number, yeah, accounting just does the parentheses around it. Then, here's why this is a special number. That number is today's date. So all dates in Excel are represented as numbers. My phone is on and ringing. There we go. So that means we can do math on them. So this is the number, number is 4,782. So I'm going to do this cell, I'm just going to say equals this cell plus 1, and it's still set as accounting. I'm just going to set both of these as a short date. So plus 1 is tomorrow. We can set them as percentages, as times. Times are decimal numbers from 0 to 1, scientific notation and text and more. What we can do also is go into more number formats, and then we can kind of have more options here. For instance, if I want to go into date, I have all these different options for how I want to represent the date. Say I want to do this, and this is something basically means that there's more data than is fitting in the cell. So I'm just going to scooch my column over, and it will be all happy there. All right. Any questions so far?
I have a question about the date. Is there
Yeah.
a formula to calculate the number of days between two dates?
Yeah.
Or is that in your formula?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is all numbers, so let's just, let's say, let's see how many days it is till my birthday. No, not 1989, 2017. Okay, so I have my 2 dates here. I should be able to just do equals this. Actually, this cell minus this cell. And because they're both date numbers, if we look at the actual, if we just say, that's, yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah. All right. So inserting a row or column, you can just do by right-clicking on a column or row and saying insert. It'll insert above or behind the row or column that you are clicking on. If you want to delete, you can just right-click and delete a row. If we want to delete a bunch of them, I'm actually clicking on the row or column here, so I get this down arrow or over arrow, and then I can click and drag. That selects all of them. I'm going to do that here and say I want to delete these 4 rows. So I'm going to say delete. That's going to delete them. If I want to insert more than one row, this is a little bit convoluted just in how it's done, but I select how many rows I want to insert, and then I right-click and say insert. Alrighty. So, we're going to, okay. I'm going to go into the View tab, and we have some options here. Sometimes you won't want to use grid lines. You saw in my formatting saying that I have grid lines turned off. But you can kind of customize how your sheet looks. And you can turn all of these options on or off. Usually you want to keep headings in just because, I don't know, it's up to you. Whatever's most appropriate for the application. I have this big, long amount of text. And I want to print this. So I'm going to go to File, Print, and it's going to print beautifully. No, it's not. That's about a quarter of my data, and it's only printing one page, and it's rotated wrong. What's up with this? Okay. Let's go back to View, no, Page Layout. And first of all, I'm going to set my orientation to Portrait, so it'll better represent the data that I have. And then I'm going to select my data. I think I'm just going to do it, because it's all in these columns, I'm just going to select those columns. And then I'm going to say Print Area, Set Print Area. And this is already going to be a lot better. I can do Control P here. Show Print Preview. And so now we see that that has all of the data that I want going down here, but it's really terribly laid out. I mean, we have what, one line of 2017 on page 3? That's not good. So what we can do again is go into the View tab, and I'm going to look at Page Break Preview. I believe this is all listed on there. That allows me to see where my page breaks are. And we'll zoom in a bit here. I can now drag that page break up, and I'm going to say I want that right above 2016. And I want this one right above 2017. Now going back into Print Preview, it's going to look a lot better. I must have done that already. But if I hadn't have done the thing that I did, repeat rows, page layout, print tables. Okay. Yeah. If I hadn't have done this, we will see the titles of the page, or the titles of the columns on page 1, but page 2 does not have it, page 3 doesn't have it. So let's go into Page Layout and Print Titles. There's this option, Rows to Repeat at top. So I'm going to select this guy right here. I could just do 1 column 1, which is a range column, always specifies a range in Excel, and that will say all of row 1. It's easier just to do it this way though, because you don't have to know the formula then. I'm just going to click this button here and say this row. I want these to be my thing, and I'm going to hit enter. It's going to put that data in there, and there it is. And now if we go to Print Preview again, we can see that my rows, or my rows are repeating at the top. And so it's beautiful and ready to print. I'm gonna get out of this view. All right. So, any questions on printing? Right here, I have my conference room data. And I have all these different properties. of these. This is just a random date column I added, so we can play with that. And this example is not so helpful on such a small example of data, but if you had lots of data to parse through, this is really helpful. So what we can do is we can sort stuff. Let's say we want to sort by. Before I even do this, it is important that I selected all of my data here before I hit sort, including the headers. If I didn't select the headers, it would just say, I want to sort by column A, column B, etc. Let's see, now I'm here, we can say, I want to sort this by capacity with values largest to smallest. And it is important that I'm selecting everything, because otherwise, if I selected only to, say, from fake date to capacity and down to the bottom, then the rest of the data would not get sorted and would not stay with that particular row. So if I'm sorting from capacity to smallest to largest, we can see that it does exactly that. However, I want to be able to have a bit more control over this. So I'm going to select my data again, and I'm going to say filter. Now this allows me to do all of that a lot quicker. It puts these filter things on here, and I can sort by name from A to Z. I can sort from capacity from largest to smallest, or from smallest to largest. I can do all of these things really quickly. Let's say I only want to look at conference rooms that have windows. So I'm going to uncheck no in the has window thing and click OK. See, these 3 conference rooms have windows. The physical windows, not the operating system. And then we can see that these have screens. So let's say I want to sort this data. And now that I have this filter, I can just click anywhere in it. I don't have to select it all to say sort. It knows that that's the selection of data. Let's say we want to sort by has screens. I want the ones that are yes to come up first, so I'll say Z to A, and then, let's see, what was my example? Then we'll say sort by name. And so Joyland and Lace have screens, they are sorted by name, and then these 3 conference rooms do not have screens, and they are sorted alphabetically as well. All right. Oh, one other thing, and this is pretty much what I do every single time I get kind of a report Excel document, is what I like to do. Oh yeah, there's one other thing we can do here. So much. Right now, you can see capacity is kind of not showing now, and maybe another example is if like these were just tiny. What we can do is we can use this thing here on the home page. You can go to Format and say Auto Fit Column Width, and that's fitting the column width to the title, which I don't want. But everything else fit the column width so that it showed the title properly, as well as space for that drop down. Right. So let's say I had, actually a better example would be the printing page, because it has this, these row headers, or column headers, at the top here. Well, let's say I want to view that down here when I'm scrolling down. They just go away on the first row. So there's this awesome little tool here called freeze panes. And so you can say freeze panes, freeze top row, freeze first column, and what I want to do is freeze top row. Now it has a little line under it, and when I start scrolling down, that data stays on the top. Now if I go back to my filter sort example, if I were to freeze top row here, that freezes conference rooms, and that's not helpful to me. What I can do instead is I'm going to unfreeze panes, and I'm actually going to click right below my header. So that kind of, you can think of it as segmenting it into two areas. So I'm saying this is the top area, and right here is the beginning of the second area. And I'm going to say freeze panes. And now that's going to take those top two rows and treat them as a pane, and the bottom is going to be a pane of its own. All right, I'm going to jump right into some formulas now. So, as we saw a little bit before, we can actually do this, and I'm sure you've seen this in different Excel documents where it's saying equals this cell plus this cell, or this cell times this cell. So it's pretty simple. We just say, I'm just typing equals and then clicking on the cell I want to select, or you can type it in. I see that's B3, so I'm going to type that in right there. And it equals B3, so that's showing 5 right now, perfect. Then I want to say plus this cell. And hey, that equals 8. Awesome. So I'm going to do this one, I'm going to do minus. This is all fairly pedantic. We know how to do basic math. So yeah, we have all of those there. Now, I can do all sorts of fun stuff with it because I have a list of numbers. So let's say I want to add these together. I can do a sum function. And a sum function is just going to be equals sum. And then I'm going to start an open parentheses. And this is how all functions work. It's the function name, or the formula name, with an open parentheses, some arguments or values entered in there, and then close parentheses. That tells us that the formula is ending. So I can do this in a couple ways. I can say, okay, I want to sum this through this, or I want to sum F3 through F6. Okay, so I'm going to click F3 to select that as my first one, and I'm going to do a, why doesn't that all work? There we go. I'm going to do a colon, and I'm going to click on my last one. And that says sum F3 through F6. And there we go, there's my sum. Now, there's a couple different ways I can do this. I have, okay, so F3. Let's say I only want to sum, let's see, there's so many different ways to enter numbers in here. What we can do is we can do the first one, shift the last one, just like you would when selecting files in Windows or something like that. We can do a set of numbers. So let's say I want to do my first one and my third one. I'm going to do, let's do it manually and say comma this row. so that sums only these two cells. The way to do that with a keyboard shortcut is just to hold down Control instead of Shift, which just puts that comma in there for you. And I think the last thing to do is just click and drag the range that you want, and that enters that in there for you. So there are so many ways to do that. But that's not just a sum thing. That's applicable in any formula or any place. Like if I just wanted to select a range there, I could do that without even having the formula. It's not helpful, but yeah. Similarly to sum, we can do average. There we go. What I did here is I can start typing in average and then just use my arrow keys to select which one I want, and then hit Tab. That auto-completes it for me, and that puts in the opening parentheses. So now I can say average of these numbers, and there's my average. A little ominous. Luckily it's rounded. Okay. So that's the hard way to do it. Now here's the easy way. Let's say I want, this total thing is just totaling up each of these, so it's multiplying E3 times F3 right here, and that does that for all of these. Now I want to add the total down here, and I'll make that bold with a Control B. And I want to sum all of these up. On the home page, you'll see this lovely AutoSum function. And I can just click that, and that says, oh hey, you want to sum all these numbers that are right above here. Done. Also, another way I can do that is to just say Alt plus equals key. And that is a keyboard shortcut for there. And it is written on the sheet. And I can do that for each one of these. I want to look at my totals of each year. So I'm going to do an auto sum for each of those. And so now I have these three ranges that have sum. I want to see my total, so I'm going to use that other sum function, and I'm going to say equals this, and I'm going to hold down Control, or you could just put a comma in there, and I'm going to click that, and I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to close parentheses and hit Enter, and there's my total for the 3 years. Yeah.
Is it the actual plus key, or are you saying that Alt equals?
Alt equals is the shortcut, yeah. That would be a little bit hard if it was the plus key, because plus is on the same key as equals.
Oh.
Thank you for the question. All right, rounding. Handy thing to use from time to time. It is fairly simple. What we can do, as we saw before, is we can do the visual rounding just by moving the, oh, I did it again, wrong way. We can move that over, but that doesn't change the number. We see that number is still showing up in the formula as having 5 digits there. Yeah. Oh, also another great thing is, I just saw that. So if we have 10 and we want this to show up as having more places, we can just click that decimal place, and that pops in some padding digits there. So to do round, I am going to do an equals, and I'm going to say round. I'm going to do, after I have that popping up, I'm going to do tab to autocomplete that, and then I'm going to click the cell that I want to round, and I'm going to put a comma. Now you can see it's kind of prompting me here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And of course the prompt is not any much bigger. But on the bottom it says round, and then it's asking for the number and the number of digits. So I'm going to say the number is this cell over here, and I want to round it to 2 decimal places. So there we go. And oops, that was only showing like that because I played with it before. Normally it should just show up like that to begin with. Yeah. Oh. I guess we'll go back to that. I'm going to show you this trick real quick, and then we'll go back to it in a bit. But I have this formula in here, round B5 to 2 places. I want to replicate this formula for all of these. What I can do is I can come down to the bottom right of this cell and until my cursor turns into this tiny little plus, and I can click and drag that. And that replicates it to all of those. Now if I have contiguous data, which I do here, all of these are just in a line, I can actually just double click, and that does the same thing. If I had another number down here, and I did the double click, that doesn't do it there, but if I do that there, it does. And of course it rounds cell B8, which has nothing in it, so it's going to say it's 0. Another application of rounding is great when you have percents. And so I'm actually going to do this in a completely new cell. And so I'm going to say I want to look at the percentage. What percent of 20 is 14.7? So I'm going to do equals this cell divided by this cell, and we can say it, okay, it's 71%. That's not how I want it to look though. We can just click percentage, and actually that's pretty good. I mean, then I could visually round this here. But what I want to do here is say round. Oops, I didn't tell it how many digits. I'm going to say 3 digits because it's a percentage, so it's going to be, I want the first 2 digits as my percent, and then the third digit as the percent sign, and then that allows me to have that there. Okay. We'll look more into this dragging numbers out functionality. So I want to create a multiplication table like this. So I can start by saying equals this times, actually I don't want to do it, I want to do this times this. It doesn't matter, I'm just being persnickety, and that's how I want to do it. So great, so equals 1 times 1. So I'm going to drag this down, and everything's going to be fine. No. The 1 and 2 are correct, but 3 times 1 does not equal 6. So what happened here? Well, you can see that this cell is referencing 1 times 1 here. This cell is referencing 2 times 1, but it's the wrong one. So, what can I do about this? There is a magical key in Excel that allows you to specify which cell exactly you want to reference. So, I am looking at, I only want all of these numbers down here to reference the 23rd row. So what I can do is in the middle of that selection, I'm going to put a $sign, and I'm going to say, put it right before the 23. And that's going to say, use row 23 only. Now, if I drag this down, I get exactly what I want.
So is there does Excel, like a blank sheet, have a standard way that Excel would be set up for that? And you have to change the format like you just did? Because sometimes, like let's say I have 2 columns, and the third column I do a format, and I do column A times column B. And then I pull it down to the next row, and I copy the formula from above, and it just gives the same number that's in the row above, instead of copying the next one down. But sometimes, it does it right. Or the way I want it. So I'm just wondering, like some spreadsheets, when you open them,
I mean,
do you always have to do this, or?
It depends on the case. So if I had 2, 4, 6, and then I say equals this times this, it's just going to work because I'm not changing the position of everything. It's all going to, I'm not going over, and I'm just saying, and the data is moving down with it. However, in this example over here, the multiplication data is up on the top, and it's always on the top. It's not moving down with the part that you're dragging down. So because of that, it's not, it doesn't work. And so
Until you put that $.
Until you put the $sign in, so this is awesome. I have this over here. Let's put this in row 5. Let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20. That's actually working, and I'm not expecting it to. Oh, I know exactly why that's working. It's because these values, let's drag it one more row over and we'll see it fail. There we go. 5 times 10 is not 250. So what's happening again is it's taking this second row instead of the first row. So what can I do? I'm actually going to come back to my first cell, and I'm going to say, okay, in these numbers over here, I only want to reference column A. So I'm going to put a $sign there. And now, I'm going to drag that down. Those are going to stay the same. Drag that over, those are going to stay the same. But now when I drag this over once more, it's going to finally be correct, because this number here is now referencing column A only. And I can do a similar thing if I want to specify, like if I want, maybe we'll do times this. Okay. We'll just put 1 in there. So I have this cell, which is E23. This is my magic cell. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to say $E$23 to say exactly that cell. Do not change the row. Do not change the column. So now, if I drag this down and drag this, nope, not that. If I drag this over, now all of these are my correct formula before times this particular cell, and so now I can say 5, 3, 2, and it just references that cell specifically. So you can do that with formulas. You can also do that with numbers. And so right now I have a date value, and you can see as I scroll that down, it increases the date just by 1 day each time. I have a 1 here. I'm going to try that with the 1, and it's not quite working. It's only doing 1s every time. That's not what I want. So what we have to do is establish a pattern, and I want this to go from 1 to 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. We can do this with text as well. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions on those? All right. Since we have time, I will show you. Oh yeah, rounding versus formatting. That was my little catch that we were gonna look at. 22. So this is actually a problem that Sylvia had given me. She's like, she diligently computed all of this by hand, and she's like, this is wrong. Like the digits, everything's one number off. Why is this happening? And so we can see that this is a sum of these values here. We can see that this is a sum of these values here. Now these values have been rounded, these values have not. Here is where the interesting thing comes in. If we look at these different values, you can see, oh, this is not 73.162, this is actually 73,161.5, but it's being visually rounded using this. So when you sum them together, it's going to sum their actual values. And I believe, yeah. So the total is really 157.15. Now, let's say if you were doing this for taxes, where you cancel off the digits, hey, you could get an extra $1. So what I've done here is we've gone and rounded this value to 0 decimal places, and we've done that for all of them. And then this is the actual number. So it's just a difference to be aware of when you're rounding via just using the visual decimal place thing versus the actual thing. So since we have 9 minutes, I'll do that quick fun example, which I find it really fun. It's something that I use all the time. I don't know if it'll be something that you use all the time. I'm doing a lot of like inventory stuff and counting which machines are on which computers and all sorts of stuff. So it's good for me to analyze the data that I have. Two of my favorite functions are COUNTIF and COUNTA. So COUNTIF allows you to count a range, and then it allows you to then allows you to count the range and then count if that contains a particular value. So I'm going to say, because these have a lot of similar values in them, the region column, so I'm going to say count if, and I'm going to select my region here, which is column B. And then I'm going to give it the criteria of east. We could do a, just a, okay, I don't use count enough to know exactly how it works. So, oh my gosh, this is annoying. Okay. So now I'm going to do a count A, which is count, and we see there's different things here, count A, count blank, count if. Count A is going to count all the cells that are not blank. And I am going to enter that, and that tells me I have 87 things here, though that's not quite right because region is in that count. So what I could do is I could either specify my range. I could say I want my range just to be this, but that's really arduous if you have a lot of data. What I'm just going to do is -1 to get rid of that header. So now I have the count of east, and I have the total count filled out in that column. So then I can say equals 26 divided by, or equals east divided by total, and that's going to be 8I1. So that now tells me, if I do a percentage, that east, I might probably do this here, east total percent east, tells me that 30.2% of this region came from the east region. And could do, set this up like, say, east, central, west. And I can change this here. Instead of specifying east here, I can just say that. So now it's taking that cell value, and that's my criteria. And now I can just click and drag this down. And then the total is that. Why don't you put total down here? Which of course I could just use sum instead now because this is the total there. Oh, another quick thing is if you just select a group of numbers, it'll always tell you what that value is. It'll give you information on it. It'll say the average here, the count of how many you've selected, and the sum of those, just right down in the bottom.
Could you kind of sort the same way with like the next column, like let's say you wanted to figure out how many things Jones ordered, instead of putting in east, you put in...
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I just have to change my column here, and I'd have to change my criteria. Also, what we could do is just, now that we have this sorted, we could just say Jones. Then percent, and we will just make this So this is another example of where I want to specify exactly that cell. So I want to say $I, $9, and now I can drag this formula out. And we can see that those are the percents for those different places. So that is what I have.
And would it not?
Oh, yeah, if we don't put in the $, it won't, because it'll keep going down, because it's dragging the cell that you're referencing down, and it's also dragging the cell that it's dividing by down. So if we say this, it's actually going to say divided by 0, because these are all equal to 0. So, yeah.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, very good. Thank you.